The best dunker in NBA history is a debate that lights the Reddit forums, the Real GM forums, Twitter, and every other form of social media on fire. Because it's a very subjective argument to decide who the greatest NBA dunker of all time is. Now, I have my personal favorite because of the generation I grew up in, so I missed out on a lot of guys, probably like Dr. J, who I have to watch in black and white when he plays basketball. And I didn't really get to see Dominique Wilkins, who should be on everybody's list somewhere as well. But I'm joined by Andre Snellings coming in from Michigan because we're going to do, as what you would call, my friend, a barbershop conversation in regards to who the greatest dunker of all time is. Now, there's kind of two different categories for this, at least when you read the forums, right? You have in-game dunks, which are probably more impressive considering the speed of the game, what's weighed on the game, when did that dunk happen, versus everyone's just kind of enjoying the All-Star game. There's no pressure to complete the dunk outside of the, glory and fame for being an NBA dunk contest champion. Andre, you said before this clip that you know who your dunker is. You're on the spot.
I do.
Let's hear it.
Well, first of all, I have to ask, how old are you? You didn't get to see Dominique Wilkins dunk? I didn't know I was talking to a wet behind the ears guy.
Andre,
wow.
I am 14 years old. We're breaking child labor laws for me to work at this company. 24 years old. So I love hardwood classics.
Yeah, I mean, the ones you mentioned, Dr. J to me is the most original dunker in history because he kind of made it an art form and it wasn't before. And I did get to see a bit of the back end of his career. So I didn't get to, my dad always used to say, I didn't get to see him with the fro waving, as he was coming down the court to go dunk on somebody for the Nets. But I did see Philadelphia Dr. J, and, he was my favorite player as a child. So, love the doc. The best dunker of my childhood was probably Dominique Wilkins. Michael Jordan won the 2 dunk contests, and he could flutter and fly, and it was beautiful. But they went up against each other. Dominique beat him the first time they went up against each other. The second time they went up against each other, Dominique beat him again. The judges jobbed him. The dunk contest was in Chicago, is what it is.
This is the last one for Michael Jordan. He feels the pressure.
But Michael would rise to the occasion.
Oh, spectacular.
Dominique would answer in spectacular fashion.
Here he goes. That'll do it.
Creative, what an athlete, and plenty of style for Dominique Wilkins.
But for best of all time, it's the evolutionary version of all of them. He takes, Dominique's power, Dr. J's creativity, and Michael Jordan's ability to flutter. Vince Carter is, bar none, the best dunker in NBA.
Yes!
There's no argument. It's not subjective.
Thank you.
He's just the best that's ever had that one particular skill. In college, so I went to Georgia Tech, and I was there the same time that Vince Carter was at UNC. Oh. And I remember my dad came to visit one time, and he had brought this Sports Illustrated. No, he didn't bring it. My roommates had a Sports Illustrated where Vince Carter was dunking on this point guard from Georgia Tech, and he was essentially sitting on his face. And I remember my dad looked at it, and he made this face like, they ought to ask him what that man's bun totally smells like.
Vince Carter turns opponents into furniture. That is not, not okay. And speaking of Vince Carter, let's take a look at what he did for Team USA and the dunk contest.
Sur les épaules de Fred. Oh, regardez. Oh, il est pas mis, il passe là. Il passe au-dessus.
I had a really heated argument with someone I refer to as roommate Ben. If you want to use common sense, you can tell that would be my roommate. And he's a huge NBA fan, and we were going back and forth. Now, here was the argument. If you remember when Vince Carter in the dunk contest put his freaking elbow in the rim.
Swagger that the Dominiques and the Jordans have.
All right, Vince Carter with his first on the final round.
Ladies, wait, time out. Can I take a timeout?
Have we ever seen that before?
Can I take a timeout?
I saw him rubbing his upper arm, and I was wondering what he was doing. He was just cleaning it off, making sure.
He said that look at the faces in the crowd and look at the NBA players' reactions. They weren't that impressed. They weren't that loud and excited. It was all the dunks, the windmill. And I said back to him, Look at the faces in the crowd. Nobody knew what the hell they just saw. The NBA players all around them were in utter disbelief because nobody's gotten their chin above the rim at that point. He puts his arm through it. It was so magical to watch. Now, I put a screenshot of Vince Carter up on my Twitter yesterday. Just look at it. And here's the funny part about Vince Carter, like, he's going to go down, I think, and I believe you agree, as the best dunker of all time, as he should. But, God, if you can only use that talent and athleticism to go down as one of the best NBA players of all time, but that's not important to this conversation. Now, so yeah, I'm 24 years old, by the way, so I love watching the Hardwood Classics and looking at again, Neek was creative and kind of elegant as he flew through the air. Vince Carter, to me, was the beginning of the ferocious, I hate the rim, I want to take my anger out on it in the NBA, both dunk contest and in game, right? And now, even in today's day, you know, we got guys like Zach LaVine, who are, I mean, the guy is pretty damn athletic, especially in last year's dunk contest. DeAndre Jordan, who I legitimately has an issue with the rim, and Russell Westbrook, who is, I mean, that's a little guy that flies. And anytime he cocks back to throw down one of those dunks, it's truly enjoyable. But none of them hold a candle to VC3. Granted, I would love to see VC3 reenact, even at, I think he's 38 years old, about, right?
Yeah.
The D. Brown dunk. What I want him to go fucking open. It would be awesome at 38. But any other guys on the list that give Vince Carter, you think, a big run for their money in today's NBA?
Well, first of all, I can't let it slide that you said Dominique Wilkins. You know, I mean, he was elegant, but he used to beast the rim. Like he used to. That was his thing. Like Jordan was floating and Neek was like pounding it. So I definitely have to say he was one of the first ones that seemed angry at the rim. As far as today's game, it's interesting. I think LeBron. So you were saying a second ago, it's too bad that Vince didn't use his athletic ability to be one of the best players in the NBA. I think some of that was, I think Vince was a better player than maybe than history remembers him to be, because he was right there on that level with the other great wings of his time.
Especially
but you're right, he was more of a dunker than an MVP. Whereas I think LeBron went the other way. I think he was so determined to not be thought of as just a dunker that he didn't get in any dunk contests, and he never really shows us the kind of creativity he has. I think if he would have wanted to, he could have challenged Vince for that best dunker of all time, just because his absurd physical package, there's no dunk he couldn't do. And he could, I mean, imagine Karl Malone dunking from the free throw line. Like, that's LeBron. And so, you know, I think as much as Russell Westbrook is, I mean, he's a joy to watch. And DeAndre Jordan, you know, Dwight Howard before he broke down. You know, there's some fun, powerful dunkers in today's NBA. But I think LeBron is probably the only one in the current generation that could have gave VC a run for his money. There's
this great image in my head of Karl Malone dunking from the free throw.
Yeah.
To me,
and he probably would have done this. I don't know if you're old enough to remember it, but that was his, I guess he was being creative. He would shoot a layup or a regular James Worthy dunk with his hand behind his head. It's like, that
I may be young, but I have access to Hardwood Classics, and I love watching them. But again, when you're not there, I have to admit, though, I don't think I've ever been more excited for a dunk. And this is such a random person to ever get that excited for. But you remember when Manu Ginobili dunked in the finals 2 years ago? I don't know what it was about that, but to me, the old man dunk is still like one of the things that will get anybody out of their seat throwing pillows across the room because you're so damn excited. No, Manu is not the greatest dunker of all time, but he might be the greatest old man dunker of all time. Before we go,
what? I've never thought of that category before.
The old man dunking contest.
He was an underrated dunker in his prime. He didn't do a lot of it, but he was way more athletic, I think, than people realize. That's part of why he was so good.
Of course, absolutely. So before we go, just so the comment section doesn't rip both of us a new one here, yes, we are fully aware Jason Richardson was a hell of a dunker in his time. We're totally aware of probably 5 or 6 of the guys. Blake Griffin is a hell of a dunker for his time. We get it. But none of them, I don't care what the comment section says, touches Vince Carter. Nobody ever will. remind yourself. We showed you the elbow in the rim again. We're going to show it to you again because it's that damn important. We leave you with Vince Carter because he is the god of all NBA dunks. Make sure to follow Andre at Professor DRZ on Twitter, and you can follow myself at JasonRubin91. For more on Andre, check out rotowire.com. They got podcasts there. He does daily fantasy lineups, one of which I won $4.10 last week on. Thank you, Andre. I owe you half of that. And, of
Anytime.
course, the Hoops Lab column that you can check out weekly. It's a great column as well. We'll be back, as always. See you next time. The best answer you could have chose, undoubtedly.
Yeah, I mean, it's really not that close.